Picture this, 1568. The cold, grey waters of the North Sea stretch endlessly beneath a stormy sky. A small fleet of rebel ships, their wooden hulls creaking against the waves, dares to challenge the mightiest empire the world has ever known. These rebels, mockingly called the Sea Beggars by their Spanish adversaries, were about to change the course of history forever. What seemed like a desperate act of defiance by a handful of Protestant rebels would spark an 80-year struggle that would birth a new nation and transform the world. Recently unearthed documents in the Amsterdam archives have revealed an astounding discovery. These Sea Beggars were far more than mere pirates or rebels. They were part of an intricate espionage network that stretched from the foggy docks of London to the sun-baked shores of Constantinople. These documents expose a web of secret codes, hidden messages, and clandestine operations that would make modern spy agencies blush. Through a sophisticated network of merchants, sailors, and diplomats, these Dutch rebels managed to gather crucial intelligence about Spanish military movements, diplomatic secrets, and trade routes. They used innovative techniques for the time: encrypted messages hidden in cargo manifests, secret compartments in trading ships, and a complex system of safe houses across Europe's major ports. The Spanish Empire, where the sun never set, controlling vast territories from the Americas to the Philippines, found itself outwitted by this small but determined network of Dutch rebels. Their superior intelligence gathering allowed the Dutch to strike at Spanish weak points, intercept treasure fleets, and gradually build their own maritime empire. This is not just a tale of rebellion. It's a story of innovation, determination, and the birth of modern espionage. As we uncover more details from these archived documents, we're beginning to understand how a small nation of merchants and sailors managed to break free from the greatest empire of their time, establishing a new republic that would become a global maritime power in its own right. Prepare yourself to discover the hidden history of the greatest revolution of the modern age. This is the story of how a nation born from the sea changed the world forever. From innovative naval tactics to groundbreaking financial systems, from artistic masterpieces to scientific discoveries, the Dutch Revolt would reshape Europe and set the stage for the modern world as we know it. Get ready to uncover how this small country dared to challenge an empire where the sun never set, and in doing so, ignited a revolution that would last 8 decades and change the course of world history. This is more than just a historical account. It's a tale of espionage, courage, and the indomitable human spirit that continues to inspire us today. William of Orange emerges as one of history's most fascinating figures, a man whose life reads like a political thriller. Born into German nobility, young William was thrust into the sophisticated world of the Spanish court at age 11, when he inherited the Principality of Orange. In an extraordinary twist of fate, Emperor Charles V personally oversaw his education, treating him almost as a son. The boy, who would later become the Netherlands' greatest hero, grew up speaking French, wearing Spanish fashion, and practicing Catholic rituals in the most powerful court in Europe. Despite his privileged position as Charles V's favorite courtier, William's transformation from loyal Spanish nobleman to Dutch revolutionary leader remains one of history's most intriguing pivots. His fluency in multiple languages earned him the nickname William the Silent, not for being reserved, but for his exceptional ability to keep his true thoughts hidden while navigating treacherous political waters. This skill would prove invaluable when he later orchestrated the Dutch Revolt. The Duke of Alba, Fernando Álvarez de Toledo, presents a compelling counterpoint to William's calculated diplomacy. Known throughout Europe as the Iron Duke, Alba's reputation for ruthlessness was built on decades of military victories. Yet behind his fearsome facade lay a complex character driven by an obsessive dedication to order and control. His personal letters, recently analyzed by historians, reveal a man tormented by the need for perfection in military discipline. This obsession would ultimately prove his undoing in the Netherlands, where his brutal enforcement of Spanish rule through the Council of Blood only served to fuel the rebellion he was sent to crush. Perhaps the most unexpected player in this historical drama is Peter Bruegel the Elder, whose artistic genius served a double purpose during the Revolt. His seemingly innocent paintings of peasant life and rural scenes contained hidden layers of meaning that only the initiated could understand. Art historians have recently identified subtle symbolic elements in his works that served as coded messages for the resistance. His famous painting, The Hunters in the Snow, may have contained concealed information about safe routes and meeting points for rebels, while The Peasant Wedding potentially mapped out Spanish troop movements through clever placement of figures and objects. Bruegel's ability to hide revolutionary messages in plain sight under the very noses of Spanish authorities showcases the ingenious methods the Dutch resistance employed. His works became a sophisticated communication system, using visual metaphors that Spanish censors couldn't decode. The artist's decision to focus on peasant life rather than religious or royal subjects was itself a political statement, celebrating Dutch cultural identity at a time when Spanish influence dominated the upper classes. These three men, William of Orange, the Duke of Alba, and Peter Bruegel, represent different facets of this complex conflict. William's transformation from Spanish courtier to Dutch liberation leader illustrates the personal cost of revolution. Alba's rigid adherence to authority and control exemplifies the Spanish crown's failing approach to governing its territories. And Bruegel's subtle subversion through art demonstrates how resistance can take unexpected forms. Their intertwined stories reveal how the Dutch revolt was fought not just on battlefields, but in royal courts, city streets, and even on canvas. Each man's choices and actions would help shape the future of not just the Netherlands, but of Europe itself, in ways that continue to resonate today. Their legacy lives on in the modern Dutch state, in diplomatic relations between nations, and in our understanding of how art can serve as a powerful tool for political resistance. Brussels, 1567. The Grand Place lies shrouded in an early morning mist, its cobblestones still wet from the previous night's rain. The imposing Gothic spire of the town hall pierces through the fog, its shadow falling ominously across the square where a crowd gathers in uneasy silence. The Council of Troubles, better known by its grim moniker, the Blood Court, prepares for another execution. The scene unfolds like a Rembrandt painting come to life. Deep shadows play against filtered sunlight, highlighting the faces of the assembled crowd. Merchants in their wool caps and leather aprons stand shoulder to shoulder with noblewomen in their fine lace collars. Spanish soldiers, their polished breastplates reflecting the weak morning light, maintain a rigid perimeter around the wooden scaffold that dominates the center of the square. The condemned, a wealthy merchant accused of harboring Protestant preachers, ascends the platform with dignity. His fine clothes, now wrinkled from weeks in prison, still mark him as a man of means. The dark figure of the executioner, masked and clothed in black, tests the edge of his blade against his thumb. Above, ravens circle the tower of St. Nicholas Church, their harsh cries echoing across the square. The Duke of Alba, architect of this reign of terror, watches from a window in the nearby Nassau Palace. His austere silhouette, framed by heavy velvet curtains, is barely visible to the crowd below. His presence, however, weighs heavily on the scene. Each creak of the scaffold's wooden planks, each muffled sob from the crowd, each whispered prayer seems to hang in the air like the morning mist. The tension builds as a scribe reads out the charges, his voice carrying across the square in measured tones. The list seems endless: heresy, sedition, defiance of the Spanish crown. Some in the crowd make the sign of the cross. Others stare at their feet, afraid to show any reaction that might draw unwanted attention from the Spanish guards. The scene captures the essence of the Dutch revolt's beginning, the clash between Spanish authority and Dutch freedoms, the religious tensions simmering beneath the surface, the fear and defiance intermingling in the hearts of the witnesses. This is the moment when many citizens of the Low Countries realized that peaceful coexistence with their Spanish rulers might no longer be possible. This execution is not merely a punishment, it is a message. The Duke of Alba's methods would soon transform grumbling discontent into open rebellion. As the blade falls and the crowd gasps collectively, the seeds of an 80-year struggle are being sown in the hearts of those present. The morning mist begins to lift, revealing a city on the brink of profound change, where every shadow might hide a rebel, and every whispered conversation could contain seeds of revolution. In the bustling ports of Amsterdam and Rotterdam, a new world emerges from the chaos of war. The harbors pulse with frenetic energy as merchant vessels and warships jostle for position along crowded wharves. The air is thick with the smell of tar, rope, and salt water, while the cries of seagulls mingle with the shouts of sailors in a dozen different languages. Spice merchants from the East Indies rub shoulders with weapons dealers from the Baltic, their goods carefully guarded by mercenaries whose weathered faces tell tales of distant seas. In the narrow, winding streets of Delft and Haarlem, artists' studios have become unofficial war rooms. Light streams through high windows onto canvases where masters like Frans Hals and Rembrandt capture the drama unfolding around them. Their workshops buzz with activity as apprentices grind pigments and stretch canvases, preparing to document history in oil and paint. The artists don't merely record battles, they capture the essence of a nation being forged. Merchant princes in their black doublets, civic guardsmen in polished armor, and common sailors whose weather-beaten faces reflect the spirit of resistance. The shipyards of Zaandam represent a revolution in maritime technology. Here, innovative Dutch shipwrights have perfected the Fluit, a revolutionary vessel design that requires fewer crew members while carrying more cargo. The sound of hammers and saws fills the air as skeletal hulls rise from the ground, their ribs reaching skyward like the bones of giant sea creatures. The secret of Dutch efficiency lies in the standardization of parts and the use of wind-powered sawmills, innovations that allow ships to be built faster and cheaper than anywhere else in Europe. Perhaps most impressive is the intricate network of dikes and fortifications that transforms the landscape itself into a weapon. Dutch engineers have mastered the art of controlling water, creating a complex system of sluices and floodplains that can transform fertile farmland into impassable marsh within hours. The star-shaped fortresses of the Dutch waterline represent the pinnacle of military engineering, their low profiles barely visible above the polders until you're almost upon them. These defenses combine medieval walls with modern bastions, creating killing zones that can be flooded on command. In the heart of these fortifications, young officers pore over detailed maps, planning how to use the landscape to their advantage. The Dutch have learned to read their country like a book, knowing exactly which dikes to breach and which polders to flood to create their aquatic defense system. Every city becomes an island fortress, every road a potential causeway through defended waters. This transformed landscape reflects the ingenuity of a people who have learned to turn their greatest vulnerability, the sea, into their strongest ally. The same water that threatens to drown their lands now serves as their most faithful defender, creating an amphibious nation that confounds traditional military strategy. Spanish commanders, accustomed to fighting on solid ground, find themselves facing an enemy that can literally shift the battlefield beneath their feet. At night, the scene takes on an almost mystical quality. The moonlight reflects off the flooded polders, creating a silver landscape dotted with the warm glow of lighthouse beacons and city walls. Watchfires burn atop the fortifications, their flames mirrored in the still waters below, while patrol boats glide silently through the channels, their crews ever vigilant for signs of Spanish infiltration. This is more than just a military adaptation. It's the birth of a new kind of nation-state, one that harmonizes human ingenuity with natural forces. The Dutch have created a defensive system so sophisticated that it would influence military engineering for centuries to come, while simultaneously developing the infrastructure that would make them the world's premier maritime trading power. In the midst of their struggle for independence, the Dutch revolutionized warfare in ways that still astonish historians today. In 1620, Cornelis Drebbel, a Dutch inventor working for the English Royal Navy, created the world's first functional submarine. Tested in the Thames River, this remarkable vessel could stay underwater for several hours and carry up to 12 rowers, using a chemical process that could recycle air, a secret formula lost to history. Drebbel's submarine demonstrated successful dives before King James I himself. This innovation, though not deployed in actual warfare during the 80 Years' War, marked the beginning of underwater military technology. During the tumultuous years of the conflict, Rembrandt van Rijn created one of his most famous masterpieces, The Night Watch. The painting, officially titled Militia Company of District 2 under the command of Captain Frans Banink Kok, captures more than just a group of civic guards. It reveals the complex social structure of Dutch society during wartime, where merchant soldiers maintained civil defense. The dramatic use of light and shadow, the dynamic composition, and the mysterious figures emerging from darkness reflect the tension and vigilance of a nation at war. The painting itself became a symbol of Dutch pride and independence, hanging in the Civic Guard headquarters until it was moved to the Amsterdam Town Hall. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, established in 1602, emerged as a direct result of the war effort. As the first modern stock market in the world, it revolutionized how wars could be financed. The Dutch East India Company became the first company to issue stocks and bonds to the public, creating a new way to raise capital for military and commercial ventures. This financial innovation allowed the Dutch Republic to sustain its war effort against Spain, while simultaneously building a global trading empire. The exchange's sophisticated financial instruments, including futures contracts and options, created the template for modern financial markets. Perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of Dutch military innovation was their sophisticated communication network using carrier pigeons. These birds were systematically bred and trained to carry messages between cities, ships, and military outposts. The Dutch developed an intricate coding system for these messages, often writing them on tiny pieces of waterproof paper rolled into small tubes attached to the bird's legs. This communication network proved invaluable during Spanish sieges, allowing besieged cities to coordinate with relief forces and maintain morale. The famous siege of Leiden was partially won thanks to crucial intelligence delivered by these feathered messengers. These innovations highlight how the Dutch rebellion against Spanish rule sparked a remarkable period of technological and social advancement. The necessity of warfare drove innovation across multiple fields, from military technology to finance, from art to communications. In particular, their naval innovations transformed maritime warfare. The Dutch flyboat, with its revolutionary hull design and superior maneuverability, could outperform larger Spanish galleons while requiring smaller crews. Meanwhile, their developments in naval artillery, including standardized cannon sizes and improved firing rates, established new standards for maritime combat. The Dutch approach to warfare wasn't just about building better ships or guns. It was about integrating technology, finance, and strategy in ways that had never been seen before. Their innovations during the 80 Years' War laid the groundwork for many aspects of modern warfare and commerce, demonstrating how necessity truly is the mother of invention. The legacy of these innovations extends far beyond military applications. The submarine technology pioneered by Drebbel influenced underwater exploration for centuries. The financial instruments developed at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange shaped global capitalism. Rembrandt's artistic innovations in portraying light and shadow influenced generations of artists. Even the humble carrier pigeon system contributed to our understanding of organized military communications. From the depths of the ocean to the heights of artistic achievement, from the complexities of financial markets to the simplicity of bird-borne messages, Dutch innovations during the 80 Years' War demonstrate the remarkable creativity and resourcefulness of a nation fighting for its independence. Unbelievable how the Dutch revolutionized naval warfare, isn't it? Leave in the comments your opinion on what the greatest Dutch military innovation was. And don't forget your like. Would it be the flyboat or the new artillery tactics? The Protestant spy network that operated during the Dutch Revolt remains one of history's most sophisticated early modern intelligence operations. Operating under the guise of merchant houses and religious refugee centers, this network stretched from London to Constantinople. Protestant merchants established a complex system of safe houses known as scriptoria, which ostensibly functioned as copying houses for religious texts, but actually served as intelligence gathering and distribution centers. Recent discoveries in the archives of Antwerp reveal that these merchants used a sophisticated double-entry bookkeeping system where financial records contained hidden military intelligence embedded within seemingly innocent trade figures. The Sea Beggar's secret code, only partially decrypted in recent years, represents one of the most intriguing aspects of the Dutch Revolt. These naval guerrilla fighters developed an elaborate communication system based on a combination of maritime flags, lantern signals, and coded messages hidden within cargo manifests. Perhaps most ingeniously, they used modified versions of Protestant psalms as code phrases, with specific verses indicating Spanish fleet movements or planned attacks. The discovery of a water-damaged codebook in a shipwreck off the Zealand coast in 2019 has provided historians with new insights into their methods, revealing that what appeared to be simple prayer books often contained complex military instructions hidden within religious texts. The clandestine trade routes established during the conflict highlight the remarkable ingenuity of Dutch merchants operating under Spanish blockades. These merchants created what they called the spider's web, a complex network of small ports and inland waterways unknown to Spanish authorities. They developed a system of false bottoms in their ships' hulls and created elaborate documentation chains that made contraband appear as legitimate cargo. One particularly fascinating route, known as the Nordic Circuit, involved ships sailing far north around Scotland before cutting south through the North Sea, using the treacherous waters and adverse weather conditions as cover from Spanish patrols. Perhaps the most enduring mystery of the 80 Years' War centers around the lost Spanish treasure fleet of 1573. According to recently uncovered documents in the Spanish naval archives, a fleet carrying gold from the Americas, intended to fund the Spanish military campaign in the Netherlands, disappeared in the North Sea. Some historians believe the Sea Beggars intercepted this fleet using intelligence from their spy network, while others suggest the ships fell victim to a powerful storm. Most intriguing are the Dutch naval records indicating unusual activity around the Wadden Islands during this period, with several small Dutch vessels making multiple nighttime trips to an uncharted sandbar. The mystery deepened in 2023 when maritime archaeologists discovered traces of a 16th-century shipwreck near Texel, including Spanish coins and weapons. However, the main cargo holds appeared to have been systematically emptied, suggesting a coordinated salvage operation rather than a natural disaster. This has led to speculation that the Dutch rebels may have successfully captured the treasure and managed to keep the operation secret, using the funds to finance their resistance while spreading disinformation about the fleet's fate to prevent Spanish reprisals. Each of these elements represents a layer of clandestine warfare that played out alongside the more visible military confrontations. The Protestant spy network's effectiveness lay in its ability to blend seamlessly with legitimate commercial and religious activities. The Sea Beggars Code demonstrated how resistance fighters could use cultural and religious knowledge to create secure communication systems. The clandestine trade routes revealed how economic warfare could be just as crucial as military engagements. The mystery of the lost Spanish treasure fleet continues to highlight how much of this shadow war remains unknown, with new discoveries constantly reshaping our understanding of this pivotal conflict. These secret operations fundamentally changed the nature of warfare and espionage. The Dutch rebels' innovative approaches to intelligence gathering, secure communication, and clandestine commerce created templates that would influence military and intelligence operations for centuries to come. Their methods demonstrated how a smaller power could effectively resist a superior force through clever use of information, deception, and economic warfare. The legacy of these secret operations extends beyond their historical significance. They represent early examples of organized resistance movements using sophisticated intelligence networks, secure communication systems, and economic warfare, elements that would become crucial in future conflicts and shape the development of modern intelligence services. The 80 Years' War left behind a remarkable paper trail that continues to offer new insights into this pivotal conflict. The intercepted Spanish Crown correspondence, preserved in archives across the Netherlands and Belgium, reveals the internal struggles of an empire grappling with rebellion. These letters, written between King Philip II and his governors in the Low Countries, expose the growing frustration of Spanish authorities. In one particularly revealing letter from 1572, the Duke of Alba writes to Philip II, "These rebels possess an uncanny ability to predict our movements, as if the very winds carry our secrets to their ears." This correspondence also details the financial strain of maintaining Spanish forces in the region, with numerous requests for additional funding and complaints about delayed payments to troops. The Dutch naval maps represent a quantum leap in cartographic accuracy and detail. These documents, many preserved in the Maritime Museum of Amsterdam, showcase the Dutch mastery of hydrography. Unlike their contemporaries, Dutch cartographers created detailed depth soundings, marked dangerous shoals, and mapped intricate coastal features. They developed a revolutionary system of coastal profiles, allowing ships to navigate by matching the shoreline's appearance to pre-drawn sketches. The famous Secret Atlas of the Dutch East India Company, containing detailed information about Asian ports and trading routes, was so valuable that it was kept under lock and key, with only senior captains granted access under strict supervision. Merchant diaries provide intimate glimpses into daily life during the conflict. The recently discovered journal of Andreas van der Molen, a cloth merchant from Haarlem, spans the years 1586-1592 and describes how traders adapted to wartime conditions. His entries detail creative methods for smuggling goods past Spanish blockades, including hiding valuable cargo in shipments of salted fish and using double-bottom barrels. These diaries also reveal the sophisticated intelligence network maintained by Dutch merchants who shared information about Spanish naval movements through seemingly innocent commercial correspondence. The Dutch East India Company, VOC, records represent the birth of modern corporate documentation. Their meticulous accounting books, ship logs, and commercial correspondence create a comprehensive picture of how the Dutch leveraged their maritime trade to finance their independence struggle. The VOC's innovative financial practices, documented in their ledgers, show the first use of modern stock shares and maritime insurance. Their detailed cargo manifests reveal how the company balanced military necessity with commercial profit, often carrying weapons and supplies for the rebellion alongside valuable spices and textiles. Shiplogs from VOC vessels offer particularly fascinating insights into the naval aspects of the conflict. Captains maintained detailed records of encounters with Spanish warships, weather conditions, and navigation techniques. These logs show how Dutch ships used their superior knowledge of shallow waters to evade larger Spanish galleons. The famous Captain's Log of the Hollandia from 1598 describes a daring escape through treacherous sandbanks that trapped pursuing Spanish vessels. Together, these documents paint a picture of a conflict that was as much about information and economic warfare as it was about military encounters. The Dutch rebellion succeeded not just through force of arms, but through superior record-keeping, intelligence gathering, and commercial organization. Modern historians continue to uncover new details in these archives, revealing how a small nation of merchants and sailors outmaneuvered the most powerful empire of their time through innovation, organization, and determinations. The Dutch Revolt catalyzed the birth of modern capitalism in ways that would transform global economics forever. The creation of the Amsterdam Stock Exchange in 1602 marked a revolutionary moment in financial history. Here, for the first time, continuous trading of company shares became possible, with the Dutch East India Company becoming the world's first publicly traded company. The Dutch pioneered sophisticated financial instruments, including futures contracts, options, and maritime insurance. Their innovation of fractional ownership of ships through part and reederage spread investment risk and democratized maritime trade. The Bank of Amsterdam, established in 1609, introduced stable banking practices that would become global standards, including maintaining 100% reserves and facilitating international wire transfers through a system of corresponding banks. The artistic and scientific revolution sparked by the Dutch Revolt produced achievements that still astonish us today. Dutch Golden Age painting transformed how we see the world, with masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer developing new techniques for capturing light and shadow. Their innovative use of camera obscura and experiments with optics merged art with scientific inquiry. In the scientific realm, Antony van Leeuwenhoek's microscopes revealed the previously invisible world of microorganisms, while Christian Huygens' wave theory of light laid the groundwork for modern physics. The University of Leiden became Europe's premier center for scientific research, attracting scholars like René Descartes and publishing revolutionary works that would have been censored elsewhere. Military innovations during the revolt revolutionized warfare both on land and sea. The Dutch army reforms under Maurice of Nassau introduced systematic drill training, standardized weapons, and coordinated infantry movements that became known as the Dutch system. And this military revolution emphasized smaller, more mobile units over traditional large formations. At sea, the Dutch developed the flight, a revolutionary ship design that required smaller crews while carrying larger cargo loads. Their naval tactics, particularly the line-ahead formation and broadside artillery techniques, dominated naval warfare for centuries. The Dutch waterline, an innovative defensive system using controlled flooding, demonstrated how geography could be weaponized through engineering. As the world's first modern bourgeois state, the Dutch Republic pioneered new forms of political and social organization. Unlike contemporary monarchies, power resided primarily with merchant-led city councils and provincial assemblies. This merchant republic developed a remarkably modern administrative system, with professional bureaucracies managing everything from water control to public health. The Dutch model of religious tolerance, while limited by modern standards, was revolutionary for its time, allowing different faiths to practice privately while maintaining public order. Their legal system, particularly in commercial law, established principles that would influence international trade law for centuries. The Dutch Republic's unique social structure created unprecedented opportunities for social mobility based on merit rather than birth. A robust middle class emerged, supported by innovative educational systems and apprenticeship programs. Women enjoyed greater economic rights than elsewhere in Europe, with many managing businesses independently. The Republic's urban culture, with its coffee houses, printing shops, and scientific societies, created networks for sharing ideas and innovations that would influence the Enlightenment. The impact of these transformations extended far beyond the Netherlands. Dutch innovations in finance were adopted by England and other European powers. Their artistic and scientific achievements influenced cultural development across Europe and beyond. Military reforms based on the Dutch model reshaped armies throughout the continent. Perhaps most significantly, the Dutch Republic demonstrated that a small nation of merchants and sailors could not only achieve independence from a mighty empire, but could also create new forms of political, economic, and social organization that would help shape the modern world. The Dutch model's influence continues to resonate today in our financial systems, scientific institutions, and concepts of religious tolerance and civic governance. Their revolutionary approach to combining commercial success with political liberty, technological innovation with artistic achievement, and military power with civic virtue created templates that would influence nations for centuries to come. The Dutch Revolt thus stands as more than just a successful bid for independence. It represents a crucial turning point in the emergence of modern society, demonstrating how resistance against oppression can give birth to new and more progressive forms of human organization. Step into the boots of a Dutch commander in 1574 and face one of history's most dramatic sieges. Leiden stands surrounded by Spanish forces, its population starving, with time running out. How would you break this seemingly impossible siege? Let's set the scene. Leiden's situation in October 1574 appears desperate. The Spanish forces under Francisco de Valdez have constructed a ring of 60 fortifications around the city. Inside the walls, food supplies are critically low, and plague has begun to spread among the population. The city's fate hangs by a thread, yet surrender is not an option. Everyone remembers the Spanish massacre of Haarlem's citizens the previous year. Your resources as a Dutch commander include the following assets: a fleet of shallow draft vessels commanded by the experienced sea beggars, control over the region's complex system of dikes and sluices, and the advantage of intimate knowledge of the local waterways and geography. The Dutch rebels also possess the ability to intentionally flood large areas of land by breaching specific dikes, a tactic known as inundation. Consider these strategic elements as you formulate your plan. The geography. Leiden sits in the heart of Holland, approximately 20 kilometers from the North Sea. The surrounding landscape consists of reclaimed land, polders, that lies below sea level, protected by an intricate network of dikes and watercourses. The weather. Autumn storms are approaching, which could either help or hinder your operations. Strong winds from the North Sea could push floodwaters inland if the dikes are breached. The forces. Your naval force consists of around 200 shallow draft vessels crewed by experienced sea beggars. However, most of these ships can't reach Leiden through the current waterways. You'll need to create a new path. The constraints for relieving the city of Leiden during its desperate siege are formidable, demanding a delicate balance between military necessity and civilian costs. With time running out, the city's defenders cannot hold much longer. The solution requires bold, decisive action, yet it must account for multiple critical factors. Maintaining enough water depth for your fleet while preventing the Spanish from repositioning their forces is crucial. At the same time, you must address the flooding's impact on surrounding civilian populations and ensure your own supply lines remain intact throughout the operation. In historical context, the relief of Leiden stands as one of history's most dramatic siege-breaking operations. Dutch commanders made the audacious decision to breach the dikes, flooding vast tracts of farmland and turning the countryside into a shallow sea navigable by their ships. This act of engineering brilliance came with enormous economic and humanitarian consequences, as farmland and villages were sacrificed to save the city. Now, imagine yourself in the role of commander. How would you orchestrate the relief of Leiden under these circumstances? First, the sequence of breaching dikes is paramount. Choosing strategic points for breaches requires an understanding of terrain, water flow, and Spanish positions. Timing these breaches with tides and favorable wind patterns could amplify their effect, ensuring sufficient depth for your ships while overwhelming Spanish defenses. Next, consider Spanish counterattacks. Diversionary tactics, such as feigned assaults or false troop movements, could keep their forces divided and distracted. Coordinating these efforts with the city's defenders through a system of signals, perhaps lanterns, smoke, or pre-arranged artillery salvos, would synchronize efforts and maintain momentum. Maintaining morale within Leiden is equally critical. Providing assurances to the citizens that relief is imminent and visible signs of your fleet advancing through the flooded landscape can inspire hope. Delivering limited supplies to Leiden through small, nimble vessels ahead of the main operation could serve both practical and psychological purposes. Coordination between your relief force and the city's defenders must be precise. Designating liaisons to communicate via prearranged signals ensures that both sides act in unison. While your fleet approaches, the defenders can launch calculated sallies to distract and weaken the Spanish positions, easing the fleet's path. Modern analysis adds further dimensions to this challenge. The environmental impact of flooding vast tracts of farmland cannot be ignored. While this was historically accepted as a necessary sacrifice, you must weigh the long-term economic implications. Additionally, navigating a fleet across flooded land presents logistical hurdles, from maintaining buoyancy in shallow areas to managing troop disembarkation under fire. Communications during such a complex operation would be another obstacle, as maintaining coordination across widely dispersed forces is no small task. Balancing military necessity with the cost to civilian lives and livelihoods remains a moral and strategic dilemma, as the destruction of agricultural land would reverberate long after the siege. Your plan could include measures to repair damaged infrastructure following the operation, ensuring the land's recovery and the population's return. Contingency plans for unforeseen challenges, such as shifts in wind patterns, breaches failing to flood the intended areas, or Spanish countermeasures, would be critical to success. Ultimately, this operation requires combining engineering ingenuity with strategic foresight, leveraging favorable weather and tides, and maintaining the resolve of your forces and Leiden's defenders. Reflecting on the historical success of this daring endeavor, one must wonder, could alternative approaches have achieved the same result, with fewer casualties or less destruction? How would your strategy differ, and would it succeed under the same dire circumstances? Remember, historical strategies often succeed or fail based on details that might seem minor at first glance. The most compelling plans will demonstrate an understanding of both military tactics and the unique challenges of warfare in the Dutch landscape. What innovative solution would you propose to save Leiden? The actual historical event changed the course of the Dutch Revolt. How would your alternative strategy have affected the broader conflict? The Dutch Revolt's influence on modern banking stands as one of its most enduring legacies. The Amsterdam Exchange Bank, established in 1609, revolutionized financial systems by introducing the world's first successful central bank model. This institution pioneered modern banking practices, including maintaining stable currency reserves and facilitating international wire transfers. The Dutch invention of stock markets, particularly through the Dutch East India Company, created the blueprint for modern financial markets. They introduced sophisticated financial instruments, such as futures contracts, options trading, and maritime insurance that remain fundamental to global commerce today. The concept of shareholders and dividend payments, first systematized by Dutch merchants, transformed how businesses could raise capital and distribute profits. The Dutch Republic's contribution to international law emerged from its unique position as a maritime trading nation fighting for independence. Hugo Grotius, often called the father of international law, developed his revolutionary ideas about freedom of the seas and just war theory during this period. His work, De Jure Belliae Pacis, on the Law of War and Peace, published in 1625, established fundamental principles of international relations that continue to influence diplomatic relations and maritime law. The Dutch Republic's negotiation of complex trading treaties and diplomatic agreements created precedents for modern international cooperation and conflict resolution. Religious tolerance in the Dutch Republic marked a radical departure from contemporary European practices. While not absolute by modern standards, Dutch religious policies allowed unprecedented freedom of conscience and private worship. Jews fleeing persecution in Spain and Portugal found refuge in Amsterdam, creating a vibrant community that contributed significantly to Dutch cultural and economic life. Protestant sects unwelcome elsewhere in Europe could practice their faith relatively freely. This pragmatic approach to religious diversity, driven partly by commercial interests, established principles that would later influence Enlightenment, thinking about religious freedom and human rights. The Dutch Golden Age revolutionized artistic expression in ways that continue to influence visual arts today. Dutch masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer developed new techniques for depicting light, shadow, and perspective that transformed painting. Their focus on everyday life scenes, landscapes, and portraits of ordinary citizens represented a dramatic shift from the religious and royal subjects that dominated art elsewhere. The Dutch art market, the first to operate without significant church or aristocratic patronage, created new relationships between artists and buyers that prefigured modern art markets. Dutch Baroque architecture, with its emphasis on functionality and civic pride, influenced public building design across Europe. These innovations in banking, law, religious tolerance, and art emerged from a unique historical moment when necessity drove innovation. The Dutch Republic's struggle for independence created conditions where traditional authorities and practices could be questioned and reformed. Their pragmatic approach to solving problems, combined with a willingness to experiment with new ideas, produced lasting contributions to human civilization. The banking system they created laid the groundwork for modern global finance. Their legal innovations established principles for resolving international disputes peacefully. Their approach to religious tolerance demonstrated how diverse communities could coexist productively. Their artistic achievements showed how creativity could flourish when freed from traditional constraints. This living legacy continues to influence our world. Modern stock exchanges still follow patterns established in Amsterdam. International maritime law still reflects principles first articulated by Dutch jurists. Contemporary discussions about religious freedom and tolerance often echo debates from the Dutch Golden Age, and museums worldwide showcase Dutch artistic innovations that revolutionized how we see and depict the world, and thus ends the epic story of the nation born from the waters. Hit the bell, share with other history enthusiasts, and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles to not miss our next revelations about the revolutions that changed the world.